Welcome to Campbell's Sleep Tales. Tonight, you'll hear The Shores of Strife, a 12-part journey along a forgotten coastline where one man walks between memory and shadow. In every inn he visits, something follows. Trouble, regret, something older still. If you enjoy immersive storytelling crafted for sleep and reflection, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support helps us bring more long-form stories to life. Now, breathe deep, let the fire settle, and follow the road where silence remembers. Chapter 1. The Inn of Wounds. The sea was iron-grey and foaming, hurling itself against the jagged teeth of the cliffs. Wind howled through the hollow bones of shipwrecks long broken, and above that ruin stood a lone building stitched from timber and despair. Its slate roof sagged like the shoulders of a man too long burdened, and smoke coiled from the crooked chimney as though reluctant to leave. Elias arrived near dusk. His cloak, soaked through, clung to him like the past he could not shed. He rode a limping mare, bone-thin and dull-eyed, and neither beast nor man spoke as they reached the inn. A creaking sign dangled overhead, barely legible, the sable hook. One shutter beat the wall in protest of the storm. Inside, the hearth spat more smoke than heat. The light it offered was brief and flickering, casting the innkeeper's twisted silhouette across warped floorboards. He was a hulking figure, with one leg turned to wood and the other to stiffened leather. His eyes, pale and sunken, watched Elias like a fisherman watches a float. "Room?" the old man grunted, voice rasped by years of salt. Elias nodded, setting a few silver coins on the counter. His blade, still sheathed, jutted from under his cloak like a shadow unwilling to sleep. Without another word, the innkeeper gestured to a narrow stair. There were 4 others in the common room. 2 men in fisher leathers drinking sour ale, a woman with hands like weathered rope carving something unseen into the table with a blunt knife, and a youth in a corner staring hard into the fire. None spoke. The inn stank of sea mold and old blood. Elias sat with his back to the wall, as he always did. He listened. Soon, the 2 fishermen began to mutter. One turned to Elias, his mouth twisted in something that could have been a sneer or a warning. "Storms follow men like you." Elias said nothing. "You carry it," the other slurred. "That look, like you've buried more than you've built." Still, Elias remained silent, but his eyes met theirs, and that was enough. The table clattered as one rose. The fight was fast, mean, and familiar. Elias moved like someone who had once tried to avoid violence and failed too many times. A chair splintered. One man hit the floor gasping, blood blooming from his nose. The other drew a rusted hook, a fisher's gutting tool. But Elias had already unsheathed his blade. He did not kill them. The silence that followed was deeper than before. Even the fire seemed to hold its breath. Later, as Elias bound his arm where the hook had grazed him, the innkeeper spoke from the doorway. "They come down from the headland every fortnight, looking for fights and memories. You gave 'em one and took the other." Elias looked up. "You knew they would start something." "Aye," the innkeeper said. "But trouble sticks to you like salt to wood." "No sense denying it." Elias thought of replying, but the words would not come. He looked at the scarred wood beneath him, the flicker of the hearth, the bruises blooming on his arm. "They say this coast is cursed," the innkeeper murmured, "and those that walk it either feed the sea or flee something worse." Elias returned to his room and did not sleep. The wind beat the shutter through the night, like a second heartbeat. He left before dawn, the road a ribbon of slate and mist. As he rode, he glanced back at the sable hook. The inn sat there, crouched against the cliff like a wounded beast. In the days ahead, he would remember it as the first place where silence turned to suspicion, and suspicion to blood. He would not yet admit it, but he had known even then that the coastline had teeth. And it had begun to bite. Chapter 2: The Shattered Sigil. The road narrowed to a thread between gnarled pines and black rock. Mist clung low, winding through the underbrush like the breath of something sleeping. Elias rode with his hood pulled high, the winds now gentle but ever whispering. Each hoofbeat struck damp earth with a sound like soft warning. The second inn revealed itself like a bruise in the forest, sunken stone, wood warped by rain and time, and ivy choking what once may have been a sign. Only the glint of a lantern swaying gently above the door hinted that the place still drew breath. Inside, the air was stale. Candles guttered in long-necked bottles, and the fireplace bore the faint ghost of ash. A man coughed in the corner, phlegm-ridden and rasping. Elias moved to the counter where a woman, tall, narrow-eyed, took his coin without speaking and passed him a rusted key. He turned to find a place by the fire, but a voice halted him. "That sword. I remember it." The speaker was slumped near the hearth, wrapped in a cloak that looked older than dust. His eyes were filmy but sharp. It was carried once by a man who fled the sea. Same eyes, same shame. Elias paused. The room stilled with him. The fire popped, and the stranger leaned forward, revealing a worn scrap of parchment in his hand. "Here, take it. I've kept it too long. Perhaps it will end with you." Elias took the parchment. On it, faded ink traced the shape of the coastline, with symbols etched at intervals, some geometric, others serpentine. One near the bottom was circled in red. Beneath it, a sigil, a broken ring encircling a downward blade. "What does it mean? You'll know when you reach the hollow. Or you won't. The coast has ways of forgetting what lives upon it." Before Elias could respond, the old man coughed violently, blood spattering the hearthstone. He slumped forward, still. No one moved. No one spoke. Later, as Elias studied the map by candlelight, he felt the weight of eyes on his back. The woman behind the counter was gone. In her place stood 3 men, cloaked, armored, and grim. "That blade," one said. "And now the map. He is the one." Elias rose slowly. "I am no one to you. You are someone to the Woken Tide. And we have orders." The fight was swift but harrowing. Furniture splintered. Glass burst beneath boot and blade. Elias ducked low, disarmed one, drove his shoulder into the next. The third man slashed down and caught Elias across the thigh before Elias buried his dagger into the man's side. They retreated, bleeding, cursing. One whispered, "We will find you again. The tide never sleeps." In the silence that followed, Elias stood among the wreckage. The map burned in the hearth behind him, but he held the sigil in his memory. The broken ring. The downward blade. He knew now that these were no random threats. Something watched the coast, something called. Before dawn, Elias limped from the inn, his breath pale in the air. Behind him, the door creaked closed, and with it, another chapter of peace. He did not look back. The air grew thick with brine and something older, a metallic scent that made the hairs along Elias's neck lift. His wound throbbed with every step, but he pressed on. The road bled into gravel and, at last, to mud as the forest opened into a low hollow where a village clung to the land like a barnacle. Here, the inn was broad and leaning, its beams tar-dark and streaked with salt. A faded sign above the lintel bore no name, only a depiction of a black sun partially swallowed by a wave. The windows glowed dimly, as if reluctant to share their light. Inside, voices murmured low. The hearth struggled against the damp. Elias entered unnoticed, shoulders bowed from pain and silence. He took a seat near the back, beneath a rafter hung with bundles of dried seaweed and bone charms. The innkeeper, a squat woman with a scar that split her lip, brought him bitter broth without asking. She nodded toward the far corner. There sat a woman cloaked in indigo, parchment spread across her table like cards of a long-forgotten game. Her eyes were dark and searching, her voice smooth as water in a tomb. "You carry it," she said, the presence of a man who remembers forgetting. Elias said nothing. He had grown tired of riddles, but she gestured to the seat across from her, and he obeyed without knowing why. "This coast once bore a name," she murmured, but the name was taken, buried. She drew out an etched disk of bone, the same sigil he had seen, the broken ring, the downward blade. "What do you know of this?" he asked. "Little, but enough to know you wear its shadow. You are not the first to walk this line between storm and silence." That night, the storm broke. A wind howled with unnatural force, tearing shutters and cracking limbs from trees. Thunder rolled over the earth like falling stone. Screams pierced the wind. Elias was first to the door. Villagers ran through the mud, torches guttering. A body lay at the foot of the stone well, limbs splayed, eyes wide and empty. "No wounds," someone whispered. But something hollered him. 3 more were found before dawn, all dead, all untouched, their mouths full of seawater. The historian's voice was grave. "They are not hunting you, Elias, not yet, but you walk too near the buried name." He stared at her. "You know who I am. I know what you were, and what they made of you." She handed him a slip of oilskin, a direction, a symbol, a name, the serpent's teeth. "You will not find peace there," she said, "but you may find memory." Elias left at dawn, boots soaked, eyes hollow. He did not look back at the bodies being carried to the sea. The storm had passed, but the shadow remained. Elias rode through the mountain pass with jaw clenched against the cold, the sigil from the historian's note etched in his mind. They called this place the Serpent's Teeth, for the fangs of rock that flanked it, and the venom that often spilled within. The building was angular, high-roofed and rimmed with frost. Outside, a crest marked a broken crown flanked by wolves. Elias dismounted, boots crunching in the silence. Inside, warmth met him like breath from a beast's mouth, thick, smoky, tinged with wine and tension. The inn was filled tonight. Merchants, soldiers, a cloaked noble. An emissary of the crown sat near the hearth, his rings glittering in the firelight. Elias moved past them, wordless. He recognized the heraldry, a sigil from a life he no longer claimed. He found his room, removed his sword, waited. That night, the emissary died. They found him in bed, mouth open, skin gray, no wound, no sign of struggle. But beneath his body lay a symbol carved in ash, a blade pointing down, ring broken. By dawn, suspicion had sharpened like knives. "He came from the north alone," a guard hissed. "Carried steel like a knight, but walks like a ghost." "The sword," said another. "I've seen its twin in the halls of Goldmere. A traitor bore it." They came for Elias as he broke his fast. He met them blade to blade. The inn became a battlefield, tables overturned, flagons shattered, blood on the stone floor. Elias moved with grim grace, parrying thrusts, dropping men like fallen timber. But they were too many. A dagger caught his shoulder. A boot sent him sprawling. He woke in the stables, bound. A low fire flickered. The innkeeper stood over him, a quiet man with eyes like wet gravel. "You are not meant to survive this coast," he said. "But perhaps you must." He cut Elias free. "Why?" Because the emissary spoke of you before he died. Said your name as though it was a curse he could not lift. Said the coast would not let you die until you remembered what you buried." Elias rose. Blood slicked his sleeve. His shoulder throbbed. Where did he ride from? South. From a place they now call the Hollow Lantern. Elias took his sword. The sigil. The pain. He left the serpent's teeth behind, but its venom remained. He did not yet understand that every path forward now curled back into memory, and that memory had fangs. Elias followed the worn path toward a rise in the cliffs where, built of dark brick and crowned with an iron spire, stood the Hollow Lantern. It was not an inn, not in the ordinary sense. It had no stable, no cook-fire, no laughter behind shuttered windows. Yet travelers came. They always had. Drawn by stories of light that danced without flame, of whispers caught in the walls, of a lamp that burned truth. Elias entered through a door that opened before his hand touched it. Inside it was dim, the air dry as parchment. The room smelled of old wax and stone. A monk in tattered vestments sat cross-legged beneath a hanging lantern. It glowed not with fire, but with a sickly luminescence, like something dredged from the deep. "I saw you coming," the monk said. Elias paused. "You know me? I know the weight you carry. I have waited to see how you would wear it." He gestured to the lantern. "This is the heart of the coast. It draws the memory of the sea and all things buried by it. Your past walks these cliffs, Elias, and it is time you saw its face." Before Elias could speak, the monk stood and stepped beneath the lantern's glow. Light poured down, too bright, too alive. The monk screamed, not in pain, in revelation. His skin blistered, his voice split into tongues. Symbols crawled across the walls. Then silence. The monk was gone. Elias stumbled back. Shadows stirred. Figures emerged. Not of flesh, but of memory made cruel. A man in Elias's armor, bloodied blade in hand. A child weeping beside a smoking ruin. A woman with eyes full of fire and voice like ash. "You left us." The lantern flared. Elias drew steel and fought as if against the tide. The shadows closed, struck, vanished. Each blow landed against air and guilt alike. His breath came ragged, his wound reopened. And then the light died. Silence returned. Elias stood alone, surrounded by ash that had not been there before. At the center, untouched, lay a second sigil, a ring hole, a blade rising. He picked it up. Outside, the coast seemed clearer, the wind sharper. He turned away from the hollow lantern, now dark, the spire bent as if bowed in grief. He did not understand what he had seen, not yet. But he knew now that the past hunted him because it had nowhere else to go, and he had made himself its lantern. Chapter 6: The Last Feast. The sun dipped blood orange as Elias approached the next inn. It was grander than the others, its timbers dark but polished, lanterns hung from every eave, smoke curling in sweet spirals from 3 chimneys. A sign above the entry read, "The Lantern's Belly, painted with gold leaf." Inside, warmth spilled like wine. Tables overflowed with meat and bread, laughter thick as stew, music curled from a lyre by the hearth. Strangers raised cups and clapped backs. It was, for once, a place alive. Elias hesitated. This was wrong. He was shown to a seat by a smiling servant and served roast hare and black mead. A girl danced by the fire, her feet bare on the stones. Eyes met his, and none feared him. "We feast tonight for luck," said the innkeeper, a towering man with plaited beard and fire in his voice. "The sea brings gifts, and we thank her." Elias studied the man. Something pulsed beneath the cheer. Hunger, desperation, fear. As night deepened, the music grew stranger, dissonant. The air thickened. A woman across the room slumped forward, her cup spilling wine. Then another. No cries. Just the soft thud of flesh on wood. Elias rose. The innkeeper's smile faltered. "It is not your turn." Blades came out from behind smiling mouths. Elias moved fast, overturning a bench, drawing steel. A servant lunged, but he twisted and brought the hilt down hard. The lyrist stood, bow drawn like a blade, and loosed a shrill note that made Elias stagger. "You do not understand," the innkeeper hissed. "She lives below, she feeds, and we live." Elias fought through the press of bodies and sound. Blood flecked the fire. Tables burned. Beneath the inn he found a trap door. Below, dark tunnels, wet stone, bones, and something moving. He did not see the beast clearly. Only limbs that were not limbs, eyes without symmetry, hunger without end. He set fire to the cellar with lamp oil and fled up through choking smoke. By dawn, the inn was ash. The survivors, if any, were scattered. Elias stood watching it burn, his blade blackened, hands shaking. He had heard the innkeeper's final words. "You're not just running from something, you're running toward it." He did not know yet if that was warning or prophecy. But the taste of the feast lingered on his tongue, and it was bitter with truth. Chapter 7. The Weeping Wall. Elias followed a path carved by wind and time, through ravines where no bird sang, and over stones smoothed by the passage of generations. He reached the Weeping Wall at dusk, a cliff face of black granite streaked with threads of salt water that never ceased, though no rain had fallen in weeks. The inn here was smaller, wedged into the cliffside as if seeking shelter. A single balcony overlooked the endless sea. It bore no name. Inside, it was quiet. The innkeeper, a mute woman with chalk-stained hands, offered him a room with a gesture. Elias accepted. He was too tired to ask. That night, in the common room, he found another traveler by the fire. Thin, wrapped in faded robes, hair bound in old cords. The man did not rise but offered bread and a name. "I am Malric, last of the line of Orensal." The name stirred nothing. "You carry its blood," Malric said, "though you wear it like a wound." Elias stared into the flames. "The coast forgets," the old man murmured, "but the wall remembers." He led Elias out into the night. They climbed the cliff path to the wall, where candles flickered in narrow alcoves. Malric traced lines in the stone, revealing carvings, names, symbols, battle scenes. This was once the heart of the Vigil, an order older than crowns. "We watched the coast, guarded its secrets, and you, Elias, were born to it, trained in silence, tempered in blood. Then you vanished. The sea crashed below." "I left," Elias said, "because I killed them." Malric looked at him. "Some, yes, but not all. You were betrayed. And you fled before the truth could root." Below, the inn shook. Figures emerged from the dark riders cloaked in grey, bearing the mark of the Woken Tide. Elias and Malric descended fast, blades drawn. The clash came fierce. Elias fought as one possessed, cutting through shadow and smoke. Malric moved with slow, deadly precision, staff cracking bone. By dawn, the attackers were dead or scattered. Malric bled from the gut. "Go to the echoing cry," he rasped. "The truth is deeper still. You must remember, not just to survive, but to become." Elias buried him by the wall, beneath the oldest carving. It bore his own name. But the face had been scratched away. He left at sunrise, not as a stranger to the coast, but as something rising from its bones. He did not weep. The wall wept enough for both of them. Chapter 8. The Echoing Cry. The coastline narrowed into a stranglehold of cliffs and wind, where the sea flung itself against the rock like a thing enraged. Elias followed a path so narrow it seemed made for ghosts. He found the inn clinging to the edge like a barnacle, small, two-storied and hunched beneath a slate sky. The name above the door was freshly carved, the echoing cry. Inside, the hearth was warm, and a familiar scent curled through the room. Juniper smoke, crushed heather, and old regret. She stood behind the counter. Her name was Lyra. She had once called him lover, had once watched him ride into war, and never return. Her hair was streaked with grey now, her eyes harder, but they pierced him the same. "I knew you would come," she said. He said nothing. "They said you were dead, that you betrayed your order, abandoned your name." Still he held silence like a blade. "But I remember what you were," she whispered. "And I know what hunts you." That night, they sat at a long table beneath the rafters. She poured dark wine. He told her only pieces of sigils and shadows, of blood and lies. She listened without interrupting. When the storm rose, it came fast, not wind, not rain, but steel. The Woken Tide had found him again. Windows shattered, arrows hissed, fire sparked from the beams. Elias and Lyra fought back to back, blades flashing. She moved like memory, sharp, sudden, precise. He remembered every motion, every betrayal. By dawn, the inn was half ruined. Smoke rose from broken walls. Bodies littered the path. Lyra sat, bleeding from the thigh, hand pressed to a gash. "They want you because you carry more than memory. You are what they fear." "What am I?" "The last of the Vigil, and the bearer of the guilt they buried." She rose, pain in every step. "The one who betrayed you is not dead. He leads them. He wears your face." Elias stared. "Go," she said, "to the veil of smoke. If you don't, everything we lost will die again." He wanted to stay, but there was no staying for men like him. He kissed her once, softly. Then he left. She watched from the ruin as he vanished into mist. The cry that followed him was not hers. It was the sound of something waking. Chapter 9, The Veil of Smoke. The cliffs gave way to low hills scorched by fire long past. Ash coated the earth, clinging to Elias's boots, rising with every step in thin grey ghosts. No birds called, no wind stirred. Only smoke lingered, drifting without direction. He found the inn at the hill's crown. Blackened timber, warped glass, door unlatched. The sign above hung crooked, etched with one word, veil. Inside, it was dim. The hearth burned, but no heat came. Shadows flickered strangely. The air reeked of bitter herbs and burnt cloth. Patrons sat, but none turned as he entered. They spoke in whispers, words that curled and vanished before they reached his ears. He stepped forward, and the world shifted. The floor rippled. He was back at the hollow lantern, blade drawn. Then, the last feast, blood in his teeth. Then, the cliff where Malric died, voice lost to the wind. Elias gritted his teeth. The room spun. He reached for his sword but found it gone. A voice called from behind the bar. "You are in your own house now." The barkeep was eyeless, face smooth and pale. Smoke curled from his sleeves. "What do you want from me?" "Not want, show." He pointed. A door opened. Elias stepped through. There he was, younger, laughing, training among the Vigil. Then, a betrayal, fire, screams. He watched himself raise the blade, watched blood spill. He cried out. The scene melted. Another appeared. Lyra, alone, waiting, watching ships that never returned. He reached for her, but she turned to ash. "Stop this. It is your soul you fight," said the barkeep. Elias fell to his knees. Smoke crawled into his mouth, his ears, his wounds. It spoke with every voice he had silenced. He screamed. Then silence. He stood, trembling. The illusions gone. The patrons turned. They were himself, in 12 forms, each bearing a different scar. He walked past them. Each bowed. Outside, the sky had cleared. The inn stood still, untouched. In his hand, his sword, whole. In his heart, something steadier than before. He had passed through the veil and emerged with himself. Carved from black stone veined with red. Its windows burned with still light. No sign swung above the door. It needed none. He entered. Within, the hall stretched wide and silent. No fire, no voices, just a stair that spiraled down. He descended. The walls glowed faintly, lit from within. He passed murals carved in stone, of battles, of kings, of the Vigil before its fall, of himself, faceless. At the end of the stair, a chamber vast as a cathedral. At its center, set in a circle of runes, stood a pedestal of stone. Upon it, the Heartstone. A crystal the size of a fist, pulsing with dim light. Around it, figures cloaked in grey. The Woken Tide. And among them, a man who bore Elias's face. "Brother," he said. Elias stepped forward. His sword was in his hand, his breath cold. "You betrayed them." "No," the doppelganger said. "I saved them. I made the Vigil matter again. Not guardians, but judges. Not watchers, but wielders." He touched the Heartstone. The runes flared. The stone pulsed. "Join me. We are the same." Elias shook his head. "We are not." The chamber erupted. Blades rang. Spells cracked the walls. Shadows danced with flame. Elias fought through the false ones, toward the man who bore his face. Their swords clashed like mirrors, blow for blow, scar for scar, until Elias broke through. The doppelganger fell. Dying, he grasped Elias's wrist. "You cannot kill me. I am you." "No. You are who I feared becoming." He drove his blade through the vision's heart. The Heartstone shattered, light blazed, then darkness. When Elias awoke, he was alone, the tide gone, the chamber still. He walked to where the stone had been. Only dust remained. He breathed. Once, twice, then climbed. The road down would be long, but it would be his. He had faced the truth and made peace with its price. His steps sure, the coastline uncurled before him, less a threat, more a memory. The mist still clung to the earth, but it no longer veiled his sight. Villages once avoided now opened their doors. The whispers ceased. People remembered his name, not in fear, but in need. He stayed in each place, if only briefly, helped repair what the tide had shattered, taught what he remembered of the Vigil, its vows, its burdens. Where there was rot, he cut it. Where there was loss, he grieved with them. He never sought forgiveness, but action bore its own absolution. In one hamlet, a boy asked if he was a knight. Elias smiled. "I was a guard who looked away, then a man who looked within. Now I look forward." The boy did not understand, but one day he would. He returned to the weeping wall, now restored. Lit candles, spoke no words. He passed the echoing cry. Lyra was gone, but she had left the inn open, a ledger in her hand, a blade beneath her bed. He did not weep. The land wept enough. At last, he came to a place he had not seen since childhood, a cove where the sea met the cliffs in soft rhythm. There, he built a cairn, planted his sword, and walked inland. The past would always echo, but he no longer answered its cry. Each step now was a step beyond, and the land for once did not resist. The sea, ever present, murmured behind the hills. At the edge of a quiet bay, he found it, one final inn. Small, weathered, peaceful. The sign above the door swayed gently. No name, just a carved lantern, whole and lit. Inside, the fire was real. The scent of bread. The sound of cups and low voices. An old man with a crooked spine tended the counter. He looked up as Elias entered. "You've come far," Elias nodded. "Storms past, I'd wager." For now, the old man poured tea, sat across from him. "I knew your kin. Long ago. You have their eyes, their silence." Elias drank, said nothing. "People think peace is a place," the old man said, "but it isn't. It's a man who no longer needs the sword." Elias looked at his hands. "Are you that man now?" Elias did not answer. But he did not rise. He stayed that night, slept without dream. At dawn he stepped outside. The sea was calm, the sky clear. He did not carry the sword. The wind met him like a friend. He walked down the coast, not as a fugitive, nor a ghost, but as a man. Only who he chose to be.